Town and Country sent a black car for me on the morning of the photo session that took me to a new nightclub on Union Square called MK. The inside of the club was ugly and barren in the daylight. I knew a few of the other girls, and some of them were acting very serious, like they were professional models. The hair people gave me a bouffant that looked like a helmet, and the makeup people put a lot of it on me. The overhaul effect was over the top, and I cringed when I finally saw myself in the mirror. But I got to keep the Carolyn Rome dress and Fogel hose they dressed me up in. 3 armed guards showed up with a jewelry guy from Boris LeBeau, and he swathed us girls with ropes of pearls and clamped our ears and wrists with gold and diamonds. Then Norman Parkinson came in, who I recognized as a very famous British photographer. I had seen his photos my whole life on magazine covers like Bazaar and Vogue. Even though he was very old, he had lively eyes and buzzed with vigor. He directed us through myriad variations on where to stand and sit and how to stand and sit between 2 macabre taxidermy Dobermans with loose teeth, whose presence I could not account for. It was fun and glamorous for the first hour, but it took almost all day. I don't know what was more exhausting, holding the Barbie hip angle, holding my arms up in the air, or holding that smile. A few days after the shoot, Kristen called again and asked me to write a paragraph of my accomplishments for the article and to fax it to her. I sat down with a blank piece of paper in front of me, but nothing came to mind. So I told myself I'd get to it later. She called again the next week. I dodged her call. Her message mentioned a deadline. Again, she phoned. I took the call and said some lie like, "I'm sorry, I'll get to it." I didn't. What was I supposed to write? I'd never accomplished anything in my life, maybe because I was a dumb bitch. I had no idea what to write. I was not a paragraph. So I blew it off. Later, I lied again, saying I forgot and apologized. When Mom and Dad's divorce was final, Mom told me her feet hurt from walking so much in the city. She sold Aunt Ellen's apartment and went back to Santa Barbara to live in the guest house of a mansion. I lucked into an illegal sublease, $373 per month, with an indefinite term in an apartment in the East 60s between 2nd and 3rd with a doorman. It was a pre-war building, and the huge living room with alcove had mulberry carpet and foot-thick curved pink walls. So girly. I fiddled with the lighting and rigged some low-watt pink bulbs behind the custom sofas that hugged the walls and bought many cheap glittery pillows from a musty Pier 1 kind of place on the west side. My new nest looked like the inside of Jeannie's bottle, but roomier. I had an enviable, photographable life in a rent-controlled apartment with a doorman. Every day was busy working for Fred, traveling all over the world, and partying with cereal and condiment heirs like Kellogg's, Gouldens, and Heinz, and hitting tennis balls with Kennedy cousins, drinking with Roosevelts, and sitting by Truman's on the beach in Long Island. I sat at dinner parties with royals from Europe and lunched at outdoor tables next to movie stars and other famous people, Andy Warhol even. But besides the hangovers from Menihonies and scorpion bowls at Trader Vic's, I started getting terrible colds. Then I got pleurisy. Then I hurt my back. Then I got an ulcer, so I went on a diet of all white food and Zantac. I got very thin, which made me look good in pictures. My Harvard-trained Park Avenue doctor asked me if I was happy. I was completely baffled by this question. He suggested a quiet vacation, and this sounded wise, so I took a week off at the end of the summer and went to the house I'd rented with the Georgetown friends I'd met at Swells. Vincent lent me his Mercedes for the week. I lounged around on the beach and took walks by myself, read, body surfed, and talked on the phone to Mom. I took a windsurfing lesson in Sag Harbor, but I wasn't strong enough to pull the sail out of the water when I capsized it, so I didn't try it twice. On my way back to Amagansett from Sag Harbor, I passed a stable. I'd been avoiding horses since Allen. I pulled Vincent's car over, turned off the Becker stereo, and cut the motor. I sat for a moment. Then I started the car again, did a 3-point turn, and drove into the stable's driveway. The barn was filled with fancy show hunters that belonged to people who lived in the Hamptons, but there were a few horses they gave lessons on. I found the instructor and scheduled to be in a group lesson that afternoon. I drove to Bridgehampton, where I remembered seeing a tack store by the IGA. I bought some paddock boots and a pair of chaps, plus a helmet, because I guessed they'd require one. Then I drove back to the barn. This would be the first time I had ridden a horse in 5 years.